afraid that it's going to change while you're doing this, and I don't want it to change. How do I do that?
Maybe just keep your mouse there, and if it's like changing forward, yeah, so it just change, like put it back.
No, you see what's going on? You see how it keeps going everywhere? This is, okay, I'm doing something here. I'm stopping the share again.
Okay, we're live. Do you want me to stop it, or do you want to just keep it?
You go ahead and tell me when to start talking.
Okay, you can start talking whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm Meena Puri, and I'll be talking about Ayurvedic nutrition via MICS, Michigan Indian American Community Services website. I'm so glad that you're joining me. If you are here, can you please say hello? And during the session, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to write them on the comment section. I will try to read all of the questions and we can address them at the next session, which will be held in 2 weeks. And so again, thanks again for being here. And just give me 1 second. I wanna, good. So Ayurvedic nutrition, it has the topic of nutrition has become very important, especially in our current pandemic where our health and our well-being has been attacked. And so everyone is looking to get healthy. We are very concerned about our health, and the attention to our health is there for the right reasons. So Ayurveda is the need of the modern times. It's a 6,000-year-old wisdom that is still needed today. And so Ayurveda is not another diet. The point of Ayurveda is to give you a bigger context, is to give you a deeper understanding so we can perhaps get away from the diet mentality, and with a deeper and a better understanding, continue to implement a diet in our life that is balancing all times, all seasons, and for all imbalances. So before I get into, there's a lot of nitty-gritty and detail to the Ayurveda nutrition, but I really like to take you in a different direction today. So instead of giving you the details first, the nitty-gritty details first, I like to set up a bigger context. Without the bigger context, it's difficult, without the bigger context, we forget or we get lost in the direction, we forget the point of it all, and we risk getting lost in superficial information and then forever are seeking the answer. So the bigger context of food is, food is very basic and centered to our well-being and centered to our life. And just came to me this morning that it's interesting times that there has been a lot of attention, almost to the point of obsession, to food, but there are others who are poverty-ridden and can't even fulfill the basic needs for food. So it's an interesting, food has become very interesting from that perspective, that the gap between the population of what food needs are, and then there's obsession on the other side, has become very wide. And food can either create disease or it can create health. And it has to do with our ability to choose the food and how we choose the food. And What do we want the food to do? And the times right now is that we are lost in the food, the whole diet mentality. There's a new information coming every day. There are more diets available than there ever were, say even 10 or even 20 years ago. At the same time, there is more confusion about food, and the illnesses that are resulting out of malnutrition and bad food choices are on the rise. So Ayurveda, giving you the bigger context, it's a reminder for us to go back to the basics. So what happens when we get lost on the path? The only way to redirect is to go back to the source and look at where the kinks are, so to speak. Look at where the obstacles are and clear those obstacles so we can go back to the source, go back to the basic and refresh and remind ourselves of the rich knowledge that our roots have. So Ayurveda, having come from India, the principles of Ayurveda remain the same throughout the globe. It's not just in India that food was used as medicine. In many countries, in all the countries, food was used as medicine. It was prepared in grandma's kitchen. Things were picked out from our garden. When people got sick with common colds and tummy ache, we did not rush to the doctor. We did not rush to the hospital because the pharmacy, the food, the medicine that we needed was in our kitchen, and it worked. So time now is ripe for us to go back to that information, go back to the roots, because there is so much confusion, there is so much worry, and there is so much anxiety about food. So now is the right time for us to really return back to the drawing board, sort of speak, and go back to the roots and really understand what food is and how to turn the food into medicine. So one of the wonderful things that have come up out of this pandemic, that people are starting to cook more. And on one hand, yes, there's the harm to the restaurant business, but at the same time, I think the food is returning from the corporations to the individuals. It's the healthiest way to eat food when you make it yourself in your own kitchen. So I think we are on the right path. And this time, this pause has given us that opportunity to go back to our kitchen and to begin to take the preparation of food into our own hands rather than corporations. And so, because we have so much available, because many of us live in a world of abundance, there's, like I talked about, there's that indulgence or obsession about food, and then there is no food on the other end. So those of us who are, sorry, I'm going to pause this. So I might be doing that from time to time because somehow this is turned into a slideshow, but just bear with me. So those of us who are, lucky enough and fortunate enough to make food into an indulgence. I say lucky very mindfully, very wholeheartedly, because the poverty and the basic need of nourishment has been taken away due to this pandemic for many, many people. But how do we turn this opportunity? How do we turn this indulgence or obsession into food, into something that is health-making and health-creating? So when there's too much worry or too much attention given to food, it's at the forefront of our mind. So we want to really understand why so much need for food, why so much desire to know the right food, to know what to eat, because we want to get healthy. And even that is not the purpose. Why do we want to get healthy? We want to get healthy so we have the energy to do what is it that we want to do. So in other words, we want to have the energy to fulfill our purpose in this world. And without the right fuel, body cannot function, mind cannot think, and it becomes an obstacle. So really, food is means to an end. The end is to fulfill your purpose. That's what will give us fulfillment. So it is not the, it is not the end of all ends. Food is not the final, food is not the final end that we're looking for. We're looking to eat food in a way that fuels us in the direction that we want to go, because that's what's going to provide us fulfillment and happiness, our ultimate longing for all the human beings on this planet. And, let's talk a little bit about what has happened to food. How have we come here? There was a time when nature taught us what to eat. There was not a globalization of food. Whatever nature produced in the different seasons, that was a teaching in itself. If it's produced, then that's what the nature was telling us to eat. And our nature, our health is not separate from the nature outside. So for example, when the seasons change, there is a change in our body, in our health as well. Just like in the winter time, everything is frozen, things are cold, and that's the time our nature, we crave foods that are heavier, that are rich in oils, that are hotter and have good oils in them, and heavier foods and sweeter foods. What happens in the springtime, as the weather warms down, everything that was frozen begins to melt away, giving rise to the new crop, like for example, dandelions and all the flowers and all the herbs and shrubs are growing right now. At the same time, what happens to our body in springtime, all the whatever was frozen or whatever we needed for our stability begins to liquidate or begins to flow. And that's one of the reasons that we end up having allergies. And if in the springtime we continue to eat the same way that we ate in wintertime, it will create all kinds of health issues. So our nature is the outer nature and inner nature. These are mirror to each other. So outer nature affects us. And there was a time again, then, food, because it was harvested near where we lived, we picked the food was cooked fresh. So there was no point of preservatives. The, soils were rich in minerals and all the nutrients. And, there were no recipes. Our recipes were given, are shared from generation to generation by watching our parents cook, by watching our grandparents cook, or watching a friend cook. So that's where we were. And now where we have come is we have abundance of information. We have abundance of food. What that has created is a lot of confusion, naturally. And because of this information, we have lost our inner reference. What I mean by inner reference, we have not been able to tune into what is it that our body needs? What is going on with my body that I can resolve with the food? So we don't have inner reference. We don't know how to look internally. We don't know if even if we look internally, we don't know how to look at that information and to transform it into food preparation. So what has happened is this external focus has, resulted in our obsession to food. And because there's so much available, and we live in a culture and a mentality, for those of us who can afford it, that more is better. So what we end up doing is storing food. Most everybody has a second refrigerator or a freezer at home. So there's in spite of the abundance of food, there's a scarcity mentality, or there's a mentality to overdo, that somehow we have bought into the concept that more is better. And in spite of all that, our search for that miracle food or our search for that miracle diet still remains. Okay. At the click of a button, we can have international recipes on our fingertips, yet we don't know what to eat. So that's quite a contrast. And this contrast is important to look at because it'll tap into our questions about how is it that we got here. Because until we understand how we got here, we won't understand how to go back to our roots, the rich roots which carry the wisdom to transform the food into our health and into our medicine. And as I mentioned before, so we have gotten caught into this diet trap. And the diet trap is there's a promise of a better image. There's a promise of losing a few pounds. And I yet have to meet a person who does not want to lose a few pounds. And I'm not advocating that we all become obese, but I want to draw your attention to our mentality, our way of thinking. Having more weight causes all kinds of health problems, but our choices have to be driven from a different place, have to be internally driven rather than externally imposed. The externally imposed rules per se is, the look. How do I look? Can I lose a few pounds to look better? And then there is that because we have so much scientific information, because we have done all the, we have the science to prove the benefits of many foods, only to find, as the time passes by, that what we thought was really good for us, actually it turns out it's really not good for us. So, and we're still waiting, we're kind of holding our breath. We're waiting for that miracle diet, for that miracle food that's going to be the end of all ends. And then we don't have to worry about the food anymore. So it just doesn't work that way. Anytime when we put the word diet into our vocabulary, diet means restriction. So this is how the mind responds to restriction. Anytime when you put a restriction on the mind, the urge to break that restriction gets really strong. That's one of the reasons why when we pick a diet that we say, well, I am not going to do carbs or I'm not going to do sugar, because we become so strict about it. On the other hand, we find ourselves, then abandoning all caution and say, you know what, I don't care. I don't care, it's too much, then we indulge. So when we put the restriction, the mind cannot handle that restriction. So it swings from one extreme to the other, keeping us trapped into that diet mentality. So one of the things that I'm a big advocate of is let go of the diet. Do not have the word diet in your vocabulary. It serves no purpose. It keeps us stuck in the same old cycle. It keeps us limited. It keeps us swimming in the surface, still waiting for the information. The point of Ayurveda, the Ayurveda knowledge that I want to share with you is it can help you, break the box, break the mentality of diet, so we can break out of it, expand the mind, expand our thinking, expand our understanding, and become mindful so we can choose the food moment to moment, day to day, meal to meal in a very mindful way, in a way that serves our health. Okay, so that's the inner reference that Ayurveda can provide. And there's another thing about, quick recipe, grab and go, and we're saving all the time. I'm always baffled by that because I want to know, what do we do with the time that we save? What are we saving the time for? Food is core and central to our life. We need the time to make the food. We need to take that part of our life to sit down and nourish ourselves. It's a big deal. That is our life. Preparing food is part of our life. It's not outside of it. It's not a nuisance. It's not a burden. It's not, oh my God, it comes in the way. I have to cook now. No, that is the life. So, we get stuck into concepts that are fed to us by the marketing companies, by those who want to keep us on the surface, by those who want to, perhaps keep us not so healthy. We need to rethink that and come back to something that's deeper and richer and a solid reference within yourself. So, having said all of that, I really do believe, sorry, I've talked all morning, had appointments, but we are in a way living in the best of times. For those of us who are living, for those of us who are able to afford, for those of us who are, fortunate to have good life, that these are the best times. Why are these the best times? Because look at us. There's so much availability. We can get food from any continent during any season at all times. Our grocery stores before the pandemic were open 24/7. If that wasn't enough, a click of the buttons, we can just order food and it was delivered at our doorsteps. So, and yet the troubles and the struggles with food remain. So obviously it's not the choices that are creating the problems, because we have choices, we have availability. And the knowledge is there. Yes, too much knowledge can cause confusion, but it's the person reading the knowledge. It's not the knowledge itself. It's many times we're not reading the correct knowledge, or we're not making appropriate interpretation out of what it is that we are reading. And we are not seeking help of experts, guidance to help us sort through this information. We're trying to do it all ourselves. And it becomes difficult, especially when there's so much to learn. There's so much information to navigate through. So the real conversation, I always find that this very fascinating, because I think those of us who are struggling with food, the struggle is not necessarily in the knowledge. Perhaps there is some. And the struggle isn't that we can't get the knowledge. The struggle isn't even that we don't have expert advice. But the struggle is in applying what we know into our kitchen, or into our eating, into our life. So there's a gap between knowing and doing. And no one is talking, no one is comfortable to have this conversation, but that's the most important conversation to have. Food corporations who are selling you the different foods to dazzle your taste buds are not going to have that conversation, because they are trying to serve, again, the superficial, very surfacey needs that we have bought into, okay? The real problem that food is creating illness, the real reason why food is creating illness, is because there's a gap between what we know and what we do. That gap is our subconscious. That gap is where we need to look at. That gap is our emotional way of being. That's where our food addictions, emotional eating, that are fueled by our subconscious beliefs. That's what we have to look at, because no amount of information, because I have, with my work in the clinical practice, I can give people all kinds of information, all kinds of good information. I can prepare menus for them. But until we talk about why they continue to eat poorly, even when they know better, until we resolve that gray area that's hidden beneath the surface, any amount of knowledge is just not going to be useful. So that's the important conversation to have. That's the conversation we need to first have with ourselves. And so there's a huge, there's a lot to talk about here, the food addictions, the emotional eating, and we can't solve this challenge. We cannot solve the deeper challenge by another recipe. We can't solve the deeper challenge by the miracle diet. We just cannot. We have to go to that place of where the struggle is and really be willing to look at it. So food is medicine. What does that mean? What is medicine? When you go to the doctor for medicine, the doctor needs to know what's going on with you, the prognosis and the progress of the disease, the stage where you're at, and your weight, your other medical facts, and then there's a dosing, there's a timing, there's a drug interaction, and all of that good stuff. That's when a medicine is prescribed to you. If we're going to use food as medicine, we have to think about what is medicine. So medicine means that we have to be mindful, like I talked about before, what the nature is. What's the season that's going on? Then the second is, what is our own nature? What is my tendency? Am I a small built person, or am I a medium built person? Am I a large built person? Then what is my ability to digest? Poor digestion, strong digestion. Again, we'll get into the clues, general clues to tune into the power of our digestion. And are there any imbalances going on? Is sleep is affected? Are there any, bloating and gas issues? Are there other, aches and pains in the body, other symptoms that are appearing in the body? And we have to keep all of this in mind, and not just one time, because nature changes. Our nature of our body changes, what our body needs changes. So what this requires is a deep, ever-present mindfulness about what we're eating and how we're eating it. So many times when I talk about mindfulness, it creates a little bit of a scare. It's like, oh my God, what does mindfulness mean? So it's a practice. It's a practice. It does not require time. What it requires is our attention. So it's a skill that we acquire. It's a skill to learn to how to pay attention to our living from moment to moment, so we can incorporate that mindfulness into our choices, our food choices, our lifestyle choices, into our relationships, into how we are in our families, how we are being in the world. So mindfulness is a practice. It requires a skill to learn how to be mindful from moment to moment. So until we understand that, and this mindfulness is where we will fill the gap between knowing and doing. And Ayurveda fills the gap. So there's a word what I want to say about the Ayurveda. Many people think that Ayurveda is herbs. Instead of Western medicine, now give me an herb that doesn't have side effect. Another myth is that Ayurveda is about telling me the right foods. Tell me what I need to eat for my condition, for my imbalance. We forget the fact that our current condition, our imbalances don't remain. Body changes. Body changes with our age. Body changes with our season. So it's not a one-time diet that if you have it, you can continue to follow that. There's, Ayurveda is simple, but it's so sophisticated that we have to continuously adjust a little bit here, adjust a little bit there, be mindful here, read the symptoms here, and with the, and to create a perfect medicine for the body at that time. So it's not a simple science. It can be a simple science in the sense that I can explain it to my 10-year-old nephew. But when we are using it to heal a medical condition, when we are using it to reverse disease, then it requires continuous monitoring, continuous adjustment, and tuning in and the insights that the practitioner or the Ayurveda doctor has about your condition. And so that's how we turn food into medicine. It's not for me to tell you, eat green peppers and don't eat bananas. Well, that may be good for one person. That's not good for the other person. Two people walking into my clinic with complaining the same symptoms do not walk away with the same prescription, because what gave rise to their symptoms is separate, is not the same, is different. So again, who's making the choice? It's our choice. Yes, there's a food supply and there's a lot of junk processed food because the intention is bottom dollars. The intention is not public health or your health. The intention is to sell you the most, to make the most money. Okay, so there's, the feeding the addiction. The addiction is, oh, sorry, my slide is doing its thing. So the addiction is, it keeps us on the surface, right? The addiction is to our taste buds. We have limited our food to think that if it tastes good, must be good for us. Well, potato chips taste really good. That's where, therefore, the addiction. But on the contrary, food that's good for us, it actually tastes very good because it's nourishing us on a deeper level. When food nourishes us on deeper level, the superficial food cravings no longer hold our appeal because we are internally deeply satisfied. So, and we really have to get away a little bit from this thinking that food is the end of all ends. There's an over focus on food in a way that is not healthy. So we are, I talked about before, we are eating to live. We're not living to eat. That creates all kinds of different scenarios and different challenges for us to undertake. So where is the gap? What is that gap? The gap between knowing and doing. The reason why there is hesitance or reluctance to look into the gap is because it simply is not desirable. It doesn't taste good, to keep in the food language. Let me pause that again. It doesn't feel good to us. It doesn't feel good to us to look at our deeper patterns, deeper habits that are kind of fueling our food choices. Because it's not a simple area, even when we understand what is going on inside of us, we need to figure out how to heal that subconscious mind. So the real gap is our disconnect from our truth. The truth is that, that we are all divine beings made of pure light and love. And the life conditions or the life circumstances, no matter how harsh or how challenging, they cannot penetrate that light. The gap, the disconnect becomes created when we struggle in our life. We mistake our current challenges and struggles to mean that that is us. We mistake the experience of the current challenges for the reality of who we are. The reality are we are pure divine, pure consciousness. When we forget that, when we disconnect from that, there's a gap, there's a deeper psychological gap that is created, and no amount of food can fill that gap. So that's the place where we need to look at. We need to have those conversations. That's going to give us a bigger perspective, bigger context, and that's going to solve our challenges with the diet, nutrition, and food, and our health. I believe that. I'm going to pause that. So change your mind. So this really is what I meant. Our mindset is a big deal in anything we do. Food is no different. So we have, we're living in, kitchens, big kitchens, modern gadgets, and there's no shortage of the facilities that are available to us for those of us who are lucky enough to be indulging in this. I say that because I am repeatedly reminded, especially with the current pandemic, that for the people who are dying and for the people who have become poorer and for the people who don't have the food supply. So, I don't want us to forget that. And so the mentality is our pharmacy is in the kitchen. We have to equip it like that. When we go grocery shopping, we have to think about, am I creating health or am I creating disease? Okay. And we have to move a little bit away. As much as food is a source of connection and, our sharing, overindulging in that area will result in health problems. So no matter which scenario we are in, ultimately, we have to have the mentality that food is not entertainment. Food is nourishment. So we have to move from entertainment to nourishment. And we have, again, I talked about saving time, quick recipes. We want quick recipes. We don't want it to take any time. We want it to be packed with nutrients. And we don't want to take a lot of time to eat either. So we're looking for that wonder food. And there are many, many wonderful foods, but there's not one wonder food. And actually, when we even get suppose there's the wonderful granola bar that once you eat it, you're good to go. We're really missing something very big in that process. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. What we're missing is the process of mindfully buying the groceries, the process of mindfully, coming home and cutting and mixing and chopping and smelling while the food is being prepared. Okay, that whole process of preparing food is very healing to the soul. That's where the term soul food comes from. Soul food is not prepared. Soul food is not, prepared by sticking something in the microwave. Okay, soul food is not prepared, by quick and easy and grab and go. Soul food means where your soul is involved in preparing it. Your senses are engaged. Your whole self is in this beautiful, magnificent process of creating the meal that's going to nourish you, that's going to keep you healthy, that's going to give you the fuel to do what it is that you are here to do. If we can fill ourselves with that kind of love, with that kind of care, I think that we can solve a lot of our problems. If we can shift our mind into that, I think we can solve a lot of our problems. So with that, I am going to, let me pause this for a minute. So here it is. So this is the, the start of our little education and knowledge on Ayurveda nutrition. We need to have this bigger context. We need to understand the bigger place that we are coming from. So when we get into the nitty-gritty, when we get into the details a little bit more, they are more useful, they stick for a longer time, and they'll be more meaningful. So here's 3 takeaways, or rather 4 takeaways that I can give you. So think about, recipe as a mindfulness recipe. What you may do is Perhaps, for a short time, 7-10 days, make a food and mood diary. What you're consuming, how you are feeling. Many times we think we're not eating as much as we think we're eating because we're not aware of it. When we begin to put it down on a piece of paper and we look at it, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that. Because it's very easy to grab a handful of something, stick it in our mouth while we are busy multitasking. So make a food and mood diary. Look at it after you've done it for 7-10 days. Look at it and say, where is there a pattern emerging? And where is your struggle? What do you keep on doing? Because the chances are whatever you're doing in one day, you're repeating it every day. Now, the chances also are that your patterns, they are not just limited to food. They are kind of permeating in every area of your life. The struggles in food and nutrition are the same struggles that you may have in other areas of your life. So it's just time to become aware. And also, asking what's fueling the food choice. Why is it that you picked up that candy bar or this, savory snacks instead of eating properly? Why is it that you are grazing all day instead of giving yourself the time to actually cook the food, sit down, eat the food? It's an activity just like sleeping. We can't sleep wandering around. We cannot eat wandering around. It's an activity. We have to stop everything we're doing. We do have to take the time to cook. We have to take the time to eat. And so, so this is what I'm going to part with you. Please feel free to have, questions and comments. I will be sure to read all the comments once this is done prior to the next class, and we'll address them. And this is what our next session, may look like. The Ayurveda nutrition is going to be presented every second week. So the next class is June 10th. We will get into the power of our digestion because that's the inner system. If the digestion isn't there, you can eat gold. It's not going to go anywhere. And so it's not about what we're eating. Again, the bigger, I'm going to pause that again. We'll fix that hopefully for the next session. So, it's not what we're eating, but how we are eating. What I mean by that is our mental, emotional state, how we're combining food, the quantity, et cetera, and we'll get into that in the next session. So thank you so much for watching. If you like the video and like this live and you got benefit from it, please like. Let me know that you enjoyed it, and feel free to share with others. So on that note, we will go ahead and end. And thank you again. Look forward to hanging out with you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.